Live from the Pines, your favorite East Texas sports podcast, coming at you live. Tonight we welcome South Oak Cliff Assistant Athletic Coordinator, Head Coach, Coach Jason Todd, a.k.a. Todd 2 times. How are you doing, Coach?
I'm doing pretty good, and thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I got to see you last weekend in College Station at the 7v7 state tournament, actually, and I couldn't miss the opportunity to get talk to you and make sure we get this set up and get it done.
Yes, sir, man. Yeah, and I'm glad to be here. I love some East Texas.
So, watched you last weekend. Sauk hasn't missed a beat. They make it to the championship game. They beat a great Willis team. Catch the Woodlands in the championship game, correct? Yeah, the Woodlands.
Yes.
And, things didn't go your way. But, at the end of the day, I don't think 7-on-7 is for everybody. I think, once you get in the trenches, and that makes a big difference, and you can run the ball, you can play your game. And I think 7-on-7 is one of those things for a lot of schools that it's just it's not something we don't take lightly. Everybody wants to win, but it's competing through the summer to get ready for the season.
Yeah, and that's exactly how we take it. We just use that some extra work to get ready for the season.
Coach Todd, let's talk a little bit about your journey. So you were a Dallas ISD grad, grew up in Dallas, got to play for Coach Samuels. How much, what was that like?
It was toward the beginning of his tenure of kind of starting the legacy that he has now. So it wasn't as much winning back then. We were probably the first class that actually started him, to get into a winning program type of thing, as far as actually almost making it to the playoffs. My senior year, we actually tied for the district championship, but lost on a coin flip, and didn't get to advance. And from that point on, he's been going to the playoffs and got better and better every year. But I can't say our class, my senior class, was kind of one that laid the groundwork for what his career skyrocketed from.
Talk a little about your coaching career. You started off coaching in Dallas ISD, and, how was that back then, and how did that mold you for who you are today?
Actually, came back and worked for Coach Samples. That was my first job. The difference between really then and now is, kind of the expectations have changed. Back when I first started coaching, it really wasn't thought of. You had Dallas Carter that had some playoff success, but nobody else really understood what it took, to achieve to be a statewide contender year in and year out. So from that, in Lincoln, we eventually advanced and lost to a Kilgore team in the state championship. That next year, he went to Skyline and I went with him. I became the defensive coordinator for maybe about 9 or 10 years over there. And we became like a national power statewide contender. Wasn't able to win a state championship, but we had some very good teams and had a lot of good players to come through. From that standpoint, I went over with Coach Jones, who was the offensive coordinator at Skyline, and it was his final year at South Oak Cliff before he went to Texas Tech as a position coach. And then I took over for Coach Jones. Once he left and went to Texas Tech, I took over South Oak Cliff for the last 10 years. And we've been able to kind of finish the marathon that we've been running for 20-something years. We've kind of able to cross that finish line and trying to push it out there a little bit further to keep this thing going.
People talk about the stereotypes and things about South Dallas and all those things, but, South Dallas has produced a lot of great athletes, a lot of, powerful, influential people in the community and, in Dallas, in the state of Texas, But, people don't really see the insides of what goes on in South Dallas. There's so much talent in the area. There's so many kids that, have the potential as all the other schools do, and they're doing, what they're doing in South Dallas still.
Yeah, and the big thing is, like, when you're from Dallas, the first thing people learn is that, like, where Lincoln and Madison at is South Dallas. Really, once you cross over that bridge, even though it's the southern part of Dallas, but people don't call that South Dallas. They pretty much, that's the Oak Cliff sector. So, and they start to say Southern Dallas and stuff like that. So people in Dallas, they get real offended when you say South Dallas sometimes, because I'm actually from South Dallas. But, it's a lot of talent in this area around here. We're just, down the street from Kimball, down the street from Carter. Roosevelt's down the street. Wilma Hutchins is down the street. You're surrounded by multiple charter schools. You know, and then you can just get on the highway, cross a bridge, you're in Lancaster. Cross a bridge, you'll be at Duncanville. You know, go down a little further, you're at City Hill. You know, so DeSoto's right there. So you know, it's a melting pot of talent in this particular area.
So, you know, you having the chance to coach in Dallas ISD, play in Dallas ISD, and all those things. How has that molded you for the position you're in now? You know, coaching back in South Dallas, a powerhouse program, and letting these kids understand that I'm here, you know, to stay. There's no, you know, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave stock. I'm here. You know, I want to keep building. You know, I'm trying to do things that people are doing other places right here at South.
Man, the biggest thing from as a player, you know, like I said, I grew up, you know, the only team that was really having, you know, playoff success and was always talked about was Dallas Carter. So, you know, they were kind of like a blueprint, you know, for what, you know, what I want to do when I become a head coach, but push it a little bit further. You know, just growing up from that standpoint and watching it from multiple talented teams and that's not being able to get over that hump. You know, my big thing was I wanted to come back and coach one day and get it done in Dallas, whether it was Lincoln, whether it was Skyline, you know, whether it was South Oak Cliff, you know, they all had special, you know, a special place in my heart. But to actually get it done in South Oak Cliff, you know, kind of came full circle. And you know, what we're trying to do is not just be content with what we've done the past 4 or 5 years. You know, we want to make this thing where you look back, even when I'm gone, that you just see this was the starting point, but to see it still going. You know, similar to programs like Alito. You know, when you talk about Longview, you know, you can go back, you know, look 30 years ago, and they still running the same style offense. You know, if you talk about
Carthage, Gunner, South Lake.
Yeah, all those teams, you know, and that's kind of what we want to start here at South Oak Cliff. And, you know, hopefully if the administration can stay the same and you can keep the continuity with the coaching staff through time, you know, I think South Oak Cliff has that capability to be a team that knocks down a lot of barriers. It changes a lot of people's mind on what they consider inner city football.
You talk a lot about administration, how good your administration is. How important is it to have you know, when you're trying to build a powerhouse program like the programs we talked about, how important is it to have administration in place that supports that mind?
Could you repeat that? It kind of froze for a second.
I said, you know, we talk about the programs like Salina, Carthage, Gunner, Carter, all those programs that had all that success and they continue to have those success. How you talk about administration a lot and how important it is to have a good administration. How important is it at SUC for the administration to continue to be as good as they are?
That's the number one thing. You know, our principal, you know, Dr. Johnson, he's actually East Texas guy. You know, I guess those roots in him, you know, made him to be vested in not just football, but all the total athletic programs at South Oak Cliff. You know, for my first 10 years, I was underneath Coach Mays. You know, he's a state championship winning basketball coach. So he understood. So with those two guys, it wasn't hard because they were always going to do everything they could to put you in position to be successful. That once they do their job to put you in position, you know, we got to take advantage of the opportunities and things like that in the actual program. But, you know, I haven't had one complaint, you know, in my 10 years there. They've given me everything I've asked for and stayed out of the way. You know, that they didn't try to step over and run the program. You know, that they hired me to do a job, and it was my job to get it done. And, you know, they just kind of spectated, gave advice at times. And, you know, it's been a blessing. You know, nobody ever think that South Oak Cliff will be talked about the way it's being talked about right now.
You know, people don't realize this, but, you know, Dallas ISD doesn't have the same resources that a lot of programs have. And y'all continue to still find a way to make it work and compete at that high level and have a chance to play, you know, win 2 state championships back to back, you know, make it 4 consecutive years in a row. People don't realize, you know, how challenging the road has been for your program. It hasn't been handed easy, but y'all have took everything thrown at y'all and made something out of it.
Yeah, what I can say was it started with buy-in from kids and parents. You know, during the time, before the COVID time, you know, we were removed from our campus for 2 years, where we were housed at a temporary building that had no fields. You know, no locker rooms, no gymnasium. You know,
You
it was
practice in
just
the concrete.
yeah. You know, it was just we had to bus every day to practice, get home late every day. So you know, really, the class that won the two state championships were the kids that actually went through that and came to South Oak Cliff at a time where nobody else would have came to South Oak Cliff because they had looked around and said they don't have this, they don't have that. But what those kids did, they were invested in, and it paid off in the long run. Now, when we got back to South Oak Cliff, you know, we ended up having some of those things. We ended up getting the turf field. You know, we had better locker rooms. You know, we had, you know, this, that, and other. But the thing that never changed was our grind and approach to the game never changed, no matter what the circumstances was, you know, about facilities and things like that. So one thing I always prided ourselves on was that we were going to work hard no matter what. Now, did the facilities and things like that help? Yeah, yes, indeed. It made it be able to practice when it was raining. We didn't have to worry about being in the mud and things like that. But the grind was always there. And we were going to get it done one way or the other, but it sure did help, you know, for the facilities to be improved. And we're still advancing those facilities right now, and we're not settled. Yeah, we may not have everything that everybody else has, but the thing about it is, you know, if you got a ceiling fan, you know, some people have $1,000 ceiling fan, some people have a $10 ceiling fan, but they both go round and round, and they both gonna blow air down. So, you know, it really ain't about having the most fanciest thing. It's about doing the most with whatever you get.
That's great. You talk about the grind. What mentality do you put in your kids at a young age, you know, coming in your program, that this is a standard? You know, the only standard we have is winning that state championship game. You know, when you leave here, I want to make sure you're a great young man. I want to make sure you know what you're doing before you step on those college campuses, and I hand you off. And I've told these coaches you can do this, this, and that. How important is it for you and your staff to build those things at a young age in your players?
That's probably the toughest part, you know, because we come from in our particular area, we don't have a true feeder system like some high schools, so we don't know the kids that's gonna be at South Oak Cliff when they get there as a freshman. You know, we got all these magnet charter schools that's surrounding us, so a lot of our kids don't actually go to school within the sock feeder pattern in middle school. So when we're getting kids in the 9th grade, we're probably getting them at the same time suburb schools, you know, smaller towns. They probably know their kids in the 6th grade. Well, we don't have that luxury, so everything with us has to be sped up. So you have to go through and try to build a lot of chemistry in a shorter amount of time. Our biggest thing is just about getting them kids used to working, because a lot of them come from situations where when football season is over with, they just go to the next sport. They don't understand that when football season is over at South Oak Cliff, that's just the beginning, the start for the following year. You know, it's no off time. You know, the grind is 24/7, 365. So a lot of them, we spend the freshman year trying to get those guys broke in with their mindset that, hey, as long as it's the sun coming up and the sun going down, you know, we're going to be working every day. And then that's the big thing. And also just do right. You know what I'm saying? You know the difference between right and wrong. And put yourself in position to be a great young man one day and go on and come back and help another kid achieve the same thing that you achieved.
That's great. And you talk, you know, you talk about all those things and those great things, but as far as a football standpoint, you know, what's the day in and day out look like as a South Oak Cliff Golden Bear?
Okay, in the summertime, I say it's like this, you know, because we don't have the luxuries in some schools where we hire strength and conditioning program people to come in and work our kids out. So basically, a day in the summer at South Oak Cliff, you know, most of the coaches in the summertime, they're gonna probably be working summer school or doing something like that. So they still gonna be coming to work at 9 o'clock. We lift in sections. We don't all lift one team. So, you know, we'll have the skill group 1, they'll start lifting at 2. The O-line, D-line, they lifted at 3. The linebackers, the skill group 2, they lifted at 4. And then the freshmen come in and start lifting at 5. And as each group get through lifting, so that starts at 2. So then they go out and do their skills and conditioning, things like that. So each group rotates outside after they get through lifting. And then we finish it off with the freshmen every day. You know, they'll start at 5, lift, and then they'll go from 6 to 7 every day. So, you know, we got a regular routine Monday through Thursday that you know, the coach is probably going to be at school from like maybe 12 to 7 every day. You know, and it's not like you have to break somebody's arm to be there. You know, we understand that we got to be invested. One thing I never really understood with some schools is how do you have your kids come there every day in the summer, but the coaches get to go on vacations? So I never really understood that. And like, if they got to be here in the grind, in the heat, then we should be right there with them. So, I'm one of those type of coaches.
Yeah, and you talked about, this is pretty funny. I like what you said when y'all were in College Station. Is it against the rules to bring a pool out there? Because it's hot. It's hot, and it's great to see that most of your staff is there to support.
Yeah, and that really was just half of them. Actually, we got a pretty nice size staff. A lot of people don't believe it, but we have a great size staff that just works at the high school. So but those guys, we just went through, did a poll who was free this weekend. We had some coaches that were actually, had some trips and vacations planned. So, we got the group of coaches that said they were going to come down, and then the other coaches, they were just on the, in the group chats getting updates on the scores.
Yeah, and, you have a big staff. When I saw y'all play this past year and at SFA, y'all had the sideline packed. And that's something that y'all do a great job of also, is getting the community involved. You always talk about, I love to read your tweets before, the playoff games, state championship games. We're going to white it out. We're going to black it out. And it happens. I remember 3 or 4 years ago, we walk into Arlington Stadium and everybody's in all black.
Yeah.
And then the next year you show up and everybody's in all white.
Yeah.
And, it's crazy to see that, because a lot of places you can't even get half your community to support, your kids when they're winning. But, I can only imagine when they're in a state championship game.
Yeah. Yeah, that was good, especially that first year we went to state, because the expectation wasn't there. It was like, oh, this may be a once-in-a-lifetime thing, is how a lot of people thought of it. And when I, actually could walk out that tunnel, and I looked up in the stands, especially after halftime, I was like, yeah, these people, they did come out. Kind of reminded me back when Longview had won state, and it was just like, you could tell like the whole town left and came to Dallas. Like, this was a big thing. So, it was that same type of atmosphere from when we played Liberty Hill that first year. After that, I think people started to get like the Laker fans and started to get spoiled and just, it's the expectation of winning it every year or going to state every year, where people ain't making that big of a deal to make sure they're actually in the stadium the way they should be. But, we're going to keep trying to win, and we're going to keep trying to pack it out, and hopefully one day we'll be able to set a record. Do you pick the message of the color everybody's wearing? Yeah. We really, we normally do. We normally always, as a staff, a couple of times a year, we'll wear all white, just like the kids. And then I think the second year, I think we ended up wearing predominantly black that playoff run. What kind of messed it up the third year, I think probably was one of the reasons why we didn't win it, is because we were actually supposed to be in gold that year. And we ordered some new gold uniforms, but when they came in, the sizes wasn't right in the uniform, so we wasn't able to wear the uniforms that we had planned to wear that entire year if we made it back to state. So I think we kind of messed up the colors after that second one, where we haven't exercised those demons the right way to make sure we can go off that field victorious. I'm sure you got that fixed now. Yeah. Well, we fixed it because we lost again the next year, so we're gonna come up with some more combinations. But we real superstitious at times, so we're gonna get it right this year. Talk a little about the Mecca. What does the Mecca mean to the community of South Oak Cliff? Actually, I had an uncle that went to Howard, and he always used to talk about Howard being the Mecca, the mother of all and all this type of stuff. So when I started researching soccer, because my grandfather was the principal there for about 14 years. My mother graduated from there. My other uncle graduated from soccer also. So I've been around South Oak Cliff, football, knowing about just the whole aspects of the school my entire life. It was actually the first school that integrated in DISD. So when we start coining the phrase the Mecca, we was like, this the home of integration in Dallas. So that's really what it's coined after. And then we just tried to say that, and the name kind of just, we didn't know it was going to like something that was going to really stick and last, but it was something that just ended up being catchy. And everybody kind of bought into it, with the success of the basketball teams and of the past and the success of the track programs, the girls basketball team of the past. You know, a lot of those traditions were set. So we just started saying we the Mecca. And it just became a hashtag that just carried on and it hadn't stopped. And it also was tied into a group of a family, the Muhammad family. Yeah. They're you know, they originally all this family went to soccer. You know, as people move, you know, the kids started to go other places. So it was also a tactic of the return of the Mecca was being like we bringing all the old sock people back. Their kids are now gonna start coming to sock, and it's gonna put us back on the stage that we want to be on. So you know, it was just some catchy stuff we come up with all the time. We'll maybe in a group chat and just be joking around as coaches, and we'll come up with something. And next thing you know, shit, it'll be the new hashtag.
That's great. And you know, you talk about the Muhammads. You know, the Muhammads that I can remember playing at SOC, they played a big part in your program.
Mm-hmm. They were key. But they actually were part of that culture that last step to get us over the hump. You know, we had some prior teams before when they officially started calling us Death Row. I think that may have been in 2018 with those group of kids, Stephen Parker and those guys. Then we transitioned to like I think the 19 class, I believe, or the 20 class. We had a bunch of guys who parents brought them to South Oak Cliff, Jimmy Wiry, the Jones twins, guys whose fathers played the NFL. And it just felt like South Oak Cliff was a great place for their kids to be developed. And so then we started getting more dads involved in like the 1920 era. And then when the Muhammads came in, it was kind of like the whole pilgrimage. It came to fruition. And those guys took us on past the finish line, you know, and it's directly related to make sure we got some of those guys back at South Oak Cliff that we felt was South Oak Cliff.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah,
it kind of went out.
Flashed out.
Yeah, it kind of went out. I don't know what happened. Let's see. You still there? Let's see.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back now.
Yeah. So a lot of those guys, you know, like I was saying, actually played a key role in you know, getting South Oak Cliff to what it is, you know, and what it's gonna be, and to keep it going. You know, everybody had to do their small part in order to get us where we are today.
What's it like walking off the field as a state championship? I mean, holding a state championship trophy in your hometown, you know, in your city, you know, what's it, a 25, 30-minute bus ride?
Yeah. And actually we stayed in hotels when we played the morning game. So, you know, what I say is the winning state, it really doesn't hit you because there's so many people pulling you left and right. You know, they trying to say you need to go here, you need to talk to this reporter. So really, one of the worst experiences, even though we won state twice, is not really being able to celebrate and be with the team, because then they take you off to go to the interview room, so you miss a lot. You miss about 30 minutes of the true joy of actually getting back to the locker room and stuff like that. So I would probably say the worst experience I've had of winning state twice is actually the ending of winning state. You know, like the initial thing is fine, but like the next 30 minutes, there's so many people, they got cameras in your face, you know, people following you everywhere. You know, you turn to the left, somebody grab you, you know, I just want to be with the kids and just kick it. But, you know, a lot of times they're like, hey, coach, you got to go. It's time for your interview, you know, and all this type of stuff. So, you know, that's probably the worst part of it. I actually just like the moment, just being in the moment, actually, before we even go out there before the game was probably the thing I like the most out of everything.
Maybe they can spread the games out a little bit better, because there's been a few times that y'all have got done playing or somebody else got done playing in North Shore or Duncanville or DeSoto, Duncanville, they're already out the locker room trying to stretch and warm up.
Yeah. It's tough, man, because they run that thing on a tight schedule. You know, I think you got like 45 minutes in between each game. And I understand that, you know, they want everybody to experience it, you know, in the stadium, and they have to make sure they get everybody in. It's just tough sometimes on the coach because you actually want to be with your team, and you kind of get pulled away. But, you know, it's where win the state, I take it every time. But, you know, one time I would just like to really just sit back and just be with the team the whole entire time.
No, I totally get that. So I saw you put something on Twitter and it stuck out to me. How many coaches can take that Hall Walker kid that's headed down the wrong path in life and get them to buy into playing some ball? We found our project this summer. Speak a little bit about that.
A lot of times, people are not willing to really go find some of those kids that's kind of rough around the edges that a lot of people are scared to deal with. And at soccer, I think we've made a lot of strides, and we've done a great job of not only finding the kids that want to play football, but also finding some kids in the highways that can play football that they just don't want to play because they don't want to have the dedication and the type of things like that is needed to be successful in football, and the expectation we're going to put on them about their behavior and stuff like that. So, you know, like every time, you know, I mean, every year there's different coaches. You know, we may find a project in the school that's like, hey, I know this kid, he knows walking the halls, he got to get his grades up, but the kid got a lot of potential. You know, what can we do in order to save his life per se? Then it kind of started back with we had a kid named Stephen Parker that came to South Oak Cliff, and when he walked him in that cafeteria, Derek Betty walked him to me and was like, "Go, you know," he said he wanted to play football. You know, I looked at this transcript and I almost threw up. I was like, "Oh Lord, this is gonna be tough." But what I can say is that kid has graduated college now, and it took a buy-in from not only me and the staff, but the entire staff of South Oak Cliff, administration, faculty and staff, custodians, cafeteria workers. Everybody had to buy in to help this kid get to where we knew he could be. And we kind of coined the phrase, kind of, he like a rose that grew through the concrete. And we got a lot of those kids at South Oak Cliff that society would say, leave them alone, they're not going to be nothing in life. But what we do is we understand that a lot of us come from some of these same backgrounds and seen some of these kids, and they just need somebody to believe in them. And when somebody believes in them, they end up doing it for you more so than for themselves. So, you know, we look for those kids every year if we feel like we can help them and also they can help us at the same time. It can be a nice mesh to us to save some lives and keep some kids out of the streets, out from going to jail, you know, just a lot of the bad things that life has entailed for these teenagers if they had too much idle time.
Do you think a lot of programs in the suburbs and, you know, other places turn their back on those kids? You know, they see that kid walk in the hall. He has all this potential to be a great athlete. And with being a great athlete, that kid gets a chance to go to college now. And without, you know, a lot of people don't realize this, without sport, a lot of kids don't have the path to college. And it's not because it's not there and, you know, and not an open opportunity. It's because they need something to give them the desire to focus in the classroom to get to that next level.
Yeah. I think a lot of places do turn their back on kids if it's kids are going to have to make you really work in order to get your paycheck. You know, and now, like I said, that's what I've been accustomed to my whole life. You know, growing up in them type of environments, also coaching and working in those environments since day one. You know, like, you know, we understand that at the age of 14, 15, if kids don't have a good foundation from home, a lot of them are going to go the wrong way a lot of times. But at the same time, once you start to will them in and start to get them to believe and understand the long-term goals of life, you know, a lot of them do eventually change and end up being like, hey, you know what? I see the light now. And so what I kind of say is all the time, you know, we don't cut kids. We don't get rid of no kids in South Oak Cliff. The only way a kid got to get rid of himself. You know, because even if they're not the best player, you know, we find something for them to do. They can be on the video team. You know, some of them we'll make assistant coaches. You know, some of them, you know, they'll be like little GAs and stuff like that. So, you know, we allow everybody to be a part of the entourage, you know, per se.
And that's huge because, like you said, you don't cut kids. You don't, you know, don't let kids participate. You find something for them to do. There's so many kids out there at schools that need that opportunity. They need somebody like you just to give them that extra push and stay on them, check the grades, make sure they're in the classroom, make sure on the weekends, they're not doing what they're not supposed to do. And that makes your job harder. And you don't get paid to do that, but that's just what you choose to do to make sure that kid has a chance at a better life. And like you said, jail, all the other things that can come with that. It starts at 13, 14 years old. Kids are not just getting in trouble nowadays, 16, 17. These kids are getting in trouble at a young age. So if I can put my hands on them and help them, stay the path, they're going to help me and I'm going to help them.
Yeah, and they're going to learn a lot too, about being on the team, about being held accountable, about other people depending on you, for success of the entire team. So, we preach a lot of those characteristics to these kids, and some of them get it faster than others. It's the same way some people learn algebra problems faster than others. Some people can pass English STAR test faster than others. But at the same day, do you give up on the kid that may flunk it, once? Do you say he can't never get it done? Nah, you going to keep working with him. So we provide the same strategies as any school. If a kid don't pass the STAR test, you keep having tutoring. You keep making mandatory stuff for them to go to eventually pass one day. We just don't say you can't pass it, you can't get right, or you can't change your behavior. Nah, it's too many people to give up on kids anyway. So what it look like me, a kid that come from the same environment, the same skin tone as a lot of my players, if I just give up on them, then they not going to feel like, nobody going to ever believe in them. So, we just stay the course. We stay on them. At the end of the day, I'm not big on making rules. We may have more so standards, because when you make a rule, it's black and white. Ain't no gray area when it's this or that. So we kind of have standards that we can kind of fluctuate on at times to kind of give some kids some gray area in order to still have a chance to be successful. Now, they're going to get punished when they messed up, but at the same time, we're not going to throw them away.
That's huge. And a lot of people don't realize, inner city Dallas, Dallas ISD, it's a challenge every day. You just don't show up at school like most kids, like most coaches and programs get to, and say, all right, Johnny's in class. I know he's fine. I know he's did this. I know he's ate before he got to school. I know he's going to eat before practice. He has all those, things, right there for him. You have, your program, your school, your administration, y'all have to make sure that all those things are taken care of to build what y'all have built.
Yeah, and a lot of times when people, describe what they call the inner city or South Oak Cliff, Carter schools like this, they describe the school based on a small percentage of the population. You only got a few knuckleheads that you really got to stay on. Most of our kids are straight A students, straight B students, high academic kids. And then you have that small cluster, like in anything in life, that you really have to stay on, that you really got to be in contact with, the coaches. Hey, this kid in class. Or, you got campus monitors. They're like, hey, man, I see such in the hallway. And you just constantly, stay on them. And eventually they're going to perform, or either they're going to push themselves away. And what we come to find out is most of our kids end up conforming at the end of the day. A lot of them don't want to be away from it. They just got to realize, that, hey, if I don't do right, they will take it away from me if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. And once we get that going, a lot of times, we fine. But, most of our kids are high academic kids. That's what a lot of people don't understand. Like we probably have some of the highest test scores, probably, not just comparable with inner city schools around the state, but also with other schools, suburban schools, and magnet schools too. We got some bright kids that, like this past year, our quarterback was a salutatorian. A couple years ago in basketball, two basketball players was a valedictorian and salutatorian some years back. So, our kids are achieving not only on the field, they're also achieving in the classroom, number one. And then also that's going to prepare them to achieve in life is what we want them to do.
That's great. Student athlete first always.
Yeah. And a lot of the big thing is what a lot of grown-ups don't understand is if you always push academics, that's mainly not the way to get a kid to conform to handle his academics. So most kids care about sports and other stuff like that. So we use that as a vehicle to push the other way. We don't try to push academics, then push sports. Nah, we push the sports. And by us pushing sports and driving that home, the only way you can play sports is to do this. So now they understand the requirement in order to do what they want to do. They got to do what we need them to do, and they really need themselves to do too, but they just don't see it at that time. And that's really driven home by our principal. Dr. Johnson, like he's big on that. Like, hey, find a way to reach him. And he understands that, hey, if winning in football, that helps the band, because now the band gets to talk about going to Tech Stadium. The cheerleaders get to go to Cowboy Stadium, the drill team. So that starts the school year off with a whole type of vibe. When you look at it, we played football the first semester for the last 4 years. So no kid inside Oak Cliff has went to school in the last 4 years where it hadn't been a football game all the way through the first semester of school. So we knock out the first semester on that natural vibe of a high of going to state, stuff like that. Shoot, how you really dealing with in one semester. In the spring. So, it make life great, when you're winning and everybody bought into it and it becomes the expectation.
And y'all have produced some top D1 athletes, but how easy does it make your job when these college coaches come in and you don't have to worry about test scores? You don't have to worry about, NCAA qualifications and all that, because your kids are taking care of that in the classroom already.
Yeah. It makes it easy. We got a lot of people on our staff with a lot of knowledge of the stuff that how to market kids, how to put them in position, not only on the field, but also in the classroom. But the recruiting thing, it really boiled down to one guy, Coach Traylor. He handles all our recruiting. He's all in the academics about going through transcripts, finding some glitches in kids' transcripts if a counselor been missed over something. That's one thing I can do. Like even I'm at home right now, but I can pull every player. I got their transcript like right there. We actually go over that stuff, and it's not nothing that we required to do, but it's just something that we do because we want to make sure we prepare every kid and catch some glitches before somebody else catches it where it's too late. We've had early grads the last few years because that's the new trend now. So, Coach Traylor, he go through those transcripts with the counselors, and then they start looking, okay, this kid need to take this class in order to graduate in January or in December. So, it's a well-oiled machine over here. It just ain't no roll out the football. Everybody go play football. Nah, it's a lot of stuff that's done off the camera that nobody's ever sees that really keeps our program afloat and going. And then we got some great guys that got great connections with different colleges. The way we market our kids, the certain situational stuff of being in our district allows us to focus on certain things in district that we may want to show a particular college that a kid can do, that if we were in a more competitive district, we probably wouldn't have a chance. We get to rotate more players, so more players get to play. They probably wouldn't get to play if you were playing for your life every week. So, this really is like some Da Vinci Code type stuff. It really ain't just people think it's easy, but it's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes that a lot of people just don't know that we really do over here.
It's getting ran like an SEC university.
Yes. Probably the elite of the SEC university. Probably a little bit higher, but we got some Stanford ways in us too, though. When it comes to academics and stuff like that. We've had 2 kids go to Stanford. One graduated already in 3 years. We got another one just went down there this January. So, what I can say is, it's just not about the D1 kids. It's about getting the kids in D2, the Division III. Some kids may have to go junior college, and then some kids, like we tell them every day, high school may be it for you playing football, but you can still have avenues to be involved with the game, even if you're not a player. So, we tell them some things about life. Some kids may want to grow up to be a truck driver. Yeah, we need truck drivers. We need these different type of people in different jobs. So, it just ain't about the D1 player that everybody, in a lot of the media world only talk about, the Manny Muhammad's, the Javon Thomases, but it's some Marcus Simpsons. It's a lot of other kids that a lot of people may don't know just household name because of football, but the people that I know, they're going to be great human beings and they're going to have a great life.
That's great. We'll get ready to wrap it up. I got a question to ask you. why do you like? Why when y'all get these big moment games, in the playoffs and everything, you're not just trying to beat the opponent. You got to beat the Zebras too.
You know what? Actually, man, I think we really hadn't had any problems with the officials. We had the one game, in state where the PNG called. Hey, they can go either way. If you look at it, the last 2 years that we lost state, it was a couple. They called holding on us a couple of times on touchdown runs, but man, at the end of the day, it's been some times we probably held somebody too where the flag didn't come out. So it's just like I tell my kids, every day. We got to control what we can control. If we worried about what a factor that we can't control, then we're not gonna be able to do our job the best. So, at soccer, man, we take the ups with the downs. I know our chin gonna still be held up high. Whether it was second place, first place, or wherever we finish, we still gonna respect the grind that we put into it. And sometimes in life, I think losing kind of prepares you for life, because sometimes in life you're gonna come up short. But the mark of a true champion is how does he respond when things don't go his way. And what I can say is our kids have responded the right way with adversity in these past 2 state championship losses. Nobody's like walking around with their head down. Nah, you got to get back into it. You got to go again. Because life ain't nothing guaranteed. God don't guarantee you that you're going to win every game you play. But as long as you give us the opportunity to play and we play at our hardest, we can always accept the outcome of it.
Yeah, and you talk about y'all schedule, how important is it? A lot of coaches wouldn't do what you do. They would not open the season up with North Shore, Duncanville, then you get Longview. A lot of coaches would not do that. They're looking to play teams to, get their schemes going, get their kids back in the groove before they get in that district or they get ready to, make that playoff run. But you come out the gate playing, 3 schools that have won the state championship in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Man,
some more than once.
Yeah. You're right. So, our biggest thing is we want to prepare our kids for the end game. And a lot of people try to pad their record books with wins against opponents that they know they can win, or afraid to go step out on faith and say, I'm finna go fight a heavyweight champion type of team. But what we do is soccer is we understand at the end of the day, when we play those 3 teams, nobody else we play the rest of the year is going to be as physical as those 3 teams in their own different way. Nobody's going to have some of the defensive line and offensive line play that those 3 teams have. Nobody's going to line up in multiple formations with tight ends and H-backs and 13 personnel like Longview. Like this year, we got to block 2 4-star defensive ends from Duncanville. North Shore is always a program that produces high quality players. They have great coaching. Longview is Longview. It don't matter. They come out there with a linebacker that's 5'2", 113 pounds, but he gonna play like he's 6'2", 220. So you can learn from a lot of these different things. Is that sometimes it ain't about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the heart of the dog in the fight. You know what I'm saying? And that's what we learn from the Longview style team. They never gonna quit. They always gonna play hard. You go to sleep, then that tight end gonna be, running up the sidelines, scot-free off a waggle play or something like that. Duncanville, we had to go against the Corian Moore, the top receiver in the country. So now, what receiver's gonna be better than him?
Yeah.
Keelan Russell, 5-star quarterback. What quarterback we gonna see the rest of the year that's better than them? So what we do is, like, if you were teaching the class, we putting all the hard part of the class in the beginning and saying, now we learn from it, let's get better. And when we come back around, we can relate every situation we go through to a team that we've already played, but this team not going to be exactly as good as this team in certain areas. So, it's just our own method to the madness. We ain't afraid to take a loss, and we ain't afraid to go out there and shock the world and get a win. But at the end of the day, we got to go out there and play the games, prepare our team, because I know what the team needs in order to be successful in December. A lot of people get caught up in these BCS rankings and want to be the number 1 team in week 2 and week 3, but that don't promise you success in December. We want to play in December, and we want to have a chance to win a state championship at the end of every year. And we've been working 4 years in a row, and I'll be a fool to change it now.
Yeah, and it works. You play the best of the best to prepare you for December, and you've got there 4 years in a row. And a lot of programs, like we said, won't do that. But like you said, you're blocking 2 Division I defensive ends. You're going to line up, play Longview. You're going to see that formation. You're going to see what they're going to do. They're going to line up. They're going to run the ball. Duncanville, they're going to be good again. They lose to Corey and Moore. They lose their quarterback, but they're going to be good again. And like you said, you go through district. I get to rotate kids. I'm not playing the competition that I'm going to see after round 1. I'm getting ready to go play SEC football, Big Ten football, all the way to Arlington.
Yeah, and that's really a privilege. And then we scrimmage to see the hill. You know what I'm saying? So, we going against the big boys, and we're a big boy. We just a big boy in a smaller classification, but we just as big and can play just as good as any of those teams. But, I just like to have that standard up here, and a lot of people, they wonder, they want to play in games, but I can't really schedule some teams because I know what I'm looking for when I schedule games. I'm looking for a draw, number 1, like going to North Shore, playing Duncanville, going to Longview. Those are big draws. We got some teams on the pecking order that we would like to play going forward in the future. We've been trying to play Alito, but the realignment has messed it up every year. Because we had a good little, we 1-1 versus them, so we need to break that tie. I wouldn't mind playing Highland Park. We ain't against playing the South Lake Curve. We're not against going to New Orleans and playing in the car. Like I said, we possibly looking to go into Florida to go play a team. We don't really care about all that. We just want to get out there, play, and get better. And at the end of the day, we want to be playing in December. And if we walk away with a trophy, that's what it's all about. If we don't walk away with a trophy, we still gonna get better.
Yeah, and a lot of people disagree with me on this. Houston football is elite, but I don't know what it is about it. There's nothing like Dallas football. The whole state, the whole city. It's just great football. You go to Houston, it's great football, but it's something there that just I can't see eye to eye with Houston and Dallas. You just got to put Dallas up here compared to Houston.
Yeah. When you talk about just the entire metroplex of Dallas, because Houston is so big too. And so some parts they be saying Houston, and I be like, man, that ain't Houston, that's such and such. But they consider it ours. So when you start stretching that far, then you gotta start adding the Alitos, the Solanas, and all those teams into the Dallas effect. So like I tell people all the time, it's only one team from Dallas that people that's actually from Dallas, and that's SOC. It is no other team from Dallas. Duncanville is really from Duncanville, even though it's in the DFW area. But when you talk about Dallas, it's only one school, and that's South Oak Cliff. That's been relevant, and that people talk about Duncanville, Lancaster is in Lancaster, Cedar Hill, DeSoto and DeSoto, Alito and Alito. Like we are Dallas. Like we the true definition of Dallas. You know what I'm saying? Like we the only one that can claim them zip codes and area codes and stuff like that. They just affiliates because they're around us. And a lot of those programs were built on the migration of people coming from Dallas. So, we can take a lot of pride in that too from the inner city. So I like to have some city pride. We the only one that go downtown. Like we are Dallas. We got all this, area, like this is DISD Dallas, not just Duncanville and DeSoto and Cedar Hill. No. We the home of it all. All them
the Mecca.
After. Yeah, we the Mecca, and that's why we the Mecca. And I like to let my kids know, like we are Dallas. You know what I'm saying? Like we ain't just DF Dub just because it make us look bigger. Nah, when we go to college, we say we're from Dallas, and what part of Dallas we from. When them cats go to college, they say they're from Dallas, but they really from the suburb. They ain't from Dallas. You know what I'm saying? So like we from Dallas, like we are Dallas.
Yeah, and you'll take pride in it.
Yeah. We ain't claiming no territory that we don't actually survey and own the land. We own this land.
The Golden Bears.
Yes, sir.
So talk a little about your schedule this year. We talked about North Shore, Duncanville, Longview. Then you get in your district. What are you looking for this year? What's going to be different about the South Oak Cliff Golden Bears this year?
I think we're going to be able to throw the ball around a little bit more this year. I think that's going to be one of the biggest things right there, that we're going to be able to throw the ball around, probably more than we have in the last couple of years, which hopefully catch some people on surprise. I think we're a team that we do have, we have some star player potential, but I think what this team gonna be made of is the chemistry of a lot of good players that can do their job at a high rate. It's not gonna be built on just one player. We got multiple running backs that can tote the rock. We got receivers. All of them bring a skill set to the game. We got 2 quarterbacks that both are dynamic and can do things in their own right. On defense, we returned the linebacker that's been started for 3 years and been All-State for 3 years. So, like he got to be a star. You know what I'm saying? But
he's going to Clemson, right?
No, he's going to Baylor.
Baylor,
yeah. So he needs to be a star because he's been starting on varsity for 3 years. Marcel Gibson, another guy, been starting for 3 years. So we expect them to be Ed Reed, Ray Lewis type of figures in the defense. But we got a lot of guys around them, that are great players too, that we're looking for them to make sure that they be that glue to those couple of stars that we do have. Got Ricky Giles that's committed to West Virginia. We got one of the most slept on defensive linemen, Corday Houston. He's committed to I don't want to say the wrong school. Syracuse, but he's going to Syracuse. He's already committed. I think he's one of the better defensive linemen around. Then we got a kid that was injured last year, Lathan Henderson. We got some more size on the interior this year. We got about 3 or 4 300-pounders that we can play at that interior defensive line spot. We bring back a multitude of defensive backs, that got tremendous skill sets. I just like our staff. We've only lost we lost 2 coaches from the staff from last year. One went to PV, and one took a job closer to his home in Keller. So if you really look at it, the continuity of our staff is great, and then we've added some pieces to the staff that I think gonna bring a lot of knowledge and wealth and gonna make us a lot better. So, the principal's still there. I'm still there. We got a new AD now, but the AD that just took over, he understands how the system is, and he's coming in to be a benefit to the system. He don't want to mess up nothing. So, I think we're gonna have a great year. I think this team is gonna be a team on a mission, because this is a team that these kids haven't won state since they've been on varsity. And you got to go back a couple of years in order to find a team that hadn't won state in their 4 years at South Oak Cliff. So this team is their year, it's our year, and we strive to get it done. Parents bought in, committed. The coaches are committed, the administration committed, downtown administration committed. The community committed. So that commitment gonna hopefully bring the state champion at the end of the year.
Well, Coach Todd, we thank you for taking the time out of your day to come on live from the Pines. We really appreciate you helping us grow this platform. It means a lot to us, man. It's been a journey getting this show going and getting to talk to Texas high school football coaches like you and many more. And, we'd love to have you back on the show.
Hey, no problem at all. Hey, man, I'm going to tell you, one of my best games I've ever been to in my life was what year was that Longview and Lufkin played in the 4th round of the playoffs?
2018.
In 18.
Yes.
Like that was one of the best games. That was one of the best games I ever been to in my life. Just watching it go back and forth between those 2 teams and how the stands were packed and people had to sit on the grass. Little kids in the end zone throwing the football around. And that's what Texas high school football all about right there. And, hopefully we can get South Oak Cliff to start having some of that stuff. If they start letting our stadiums get full too, and had the little kids and the stadium just be packed before the game even start, with people wrapped around the stadium.
Well, we'd like to get Sock to Lufkin.
Yeah. Well, like I tell everybody, man, tell them send the contract and then we'll look it over.
Yeah, we'd love to make that happen. That'd be a great ball game, and we come.
Yeah. Hey, tell them send the paperwork. Yeah, and we'll look at if the money right, we'll get on the bus.
Well, Coach Todd, I really appreciate you again, man. It's been a great show and great time get to sit here and talk to you and learn a little bit about the history of South Oak Cliff, the only school in Dallas.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll make sure I remember that and let everybody else know that there's only one school in Dallas that can claim Dallas, and that's South Oak Cliff.
It's like the Game of Thrones.
Well, Coach Todd, thank you again. Thank you for everybody that tuned in tonight to watch this show. It'll be posted live after the show is over. Posted on YouTube after the show is over. YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. You can find Live from the Pines. Thank you again, Coach Todd.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.